Hey, everybody. Good evening again, and welcome to our second edition of the Ending Youth Surveillance series. For those who weren't able to join us last year, we kicked it off in the fall, doing a great conversation about AI vape detection technologies. And we're going to continue the conversation today, talking about the way in which these new and emerging surveillance technologies are impacting our young people. Before we dive in, obviously, we wanted to start out by saying that we recognize that this is a very challenging moment. We find ourselves once again in a moment of crisis. We've seen the way in which law enforcement, federal all the way down to state and local, are impacting our communities, targeting and rounding up our folks. And so we just wanted to, at the beginning of this, say that we stand in solidarity with all of those folks tonight who are on the front lines in places like the Twin Cities and around the country. And it can seem like, oh, well, why are we talking about AI in a moment like this? But we understand that these surveillance technologies are the infrastructure that they are relying upon to be able to target and to contain and detain our folks at rates that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And so what we want to explore tonight is how those cultural infrastructures are playing out, creating this kind of connective tissue between the systems that serve our young people and the systems that cage them. But before I get going on my soapbox, I'm gonna stop there, and I'll turn it over to Marika to talk a little bit more about the series and to introduce our guests.
Yes, and also I just want to take a moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Marika Pfefferkorn, and the dashing gentleman you just heard from is Clarence Oko, and we are the co-founders of the Notice Coalition. We've been around for about 5 years now and working to end youth surveillance writ large. And tonight's session, we are excited to kick off the new year, episode 2, E-Hall Passes, how school surveillance harms students. So tonight we're going to be exploring electronic hall passes, or the e-hall pass. School leaders have been relying on these hall pass systems to enhance their school surveillance and also, as Clarence has said, their infrastructure to monitor students' locations, track pass duration, and manage hallway traffic. So these systems log on when and where students go. So we've invited the National Campaign for Police-Free Schools, the Advancement Project, and the Alliance for Educational Justice to help us understand why schools are turning to controversial technologies to monitor students' movements. I also wanted to give a shout out to Puentes, who is also here as a part of our presenting panel. So, the Ending Youth Surveillance series is really about exploring critical topics in technology and youth justice. And our next session will actually be in February, and we'll be taking a look about how people are using telehealth in schools as surveillance, and again, another form of infrastructure and development. But before we go into all of that, I would love for you to introduce yourselves in the chat, where you're at, and anything else you'd like to share with us about this time, about how you are taking care of yourselves amidst ongoing crisis after crisis. And I would like to introduce Jessica Alcantara, Alcantara from the Advancement Project, and she will introduce the rest of the presenters for this evening as well. I'll pass it over to you, Jessica.
Thank you. So glad to be here talking about these things with you all. Um, can I share screen? Do I have that? Okay, great. Let me not share it yet because I'm going to be talking so you can see our lovely faces before I put some slides on. Hi everyone, Jessica Alcantara, she, her pronouns. I'm one of the lawyers on the education team here at Advancement Project. Real quick, if you don't know who we are, we're National Civil Rights Org. We're based in Washington, D.C. We do movement lawyering, which means that we partner with grassroots organizations like Puente, who I'll pass it over to them to introduce themselves in a second, to support them in building power, winning change in their communities. And maybe I'll let y'all introduce yourselves before I kind of give a overview of what we'll talk about.
Hi everybody, my name is Michelle Breeze. I'm the Youth Organizer Director here at Puente. I've been here as a member as a volunteer. And I've been working here at Puente. Shockingly, I think it's about to be for 10 years, is it? No, not over 10 years. I'm not that. But it is about to be 10 years. But yeah, it's really crazy how time has been flying so quickly. Um, but yeah, I'm proud to be working here, volunteering as a youth leader, now helping other young people be here. Um, but yeah, I'll pass it to Melina before I start rambling. I just stayed in shock that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been 10 years.
Almost. Hi everyone, my name is Melina. I'm also here a youth organizer. I've been with Puente not that long. I've been with Puente for 3 years now, but I have organized in the past. A lot with, immigration justice, school, with school, within schools. Also, I think a little bit about Puente. We're going to talk about Puente youth, but a little about Puente, we do focus on immigrant rights, making sure that's our biggest focus. And also just providing services to our communities or like a legal clinic, food banks, some healing justice as well. So that's a little bit about as a whole org we do. But I won't skip over to what we do as Puente Youth. But yeah, I'll pass it back to Jessica.
And we have somebody else is supposed to join us, Lady Robledo from the Alliance for Educational Justice. She's not here right now, but we'll tap her back in if we see her if we see her join. So yeah, just a quick overview. I'm gonna give just a little bit of kind of grounding of why we even started kind of doing this work as part of the National Campaign for Police-Free Schools with AEJ. Before I pass it, most of our time will be hearing from Michelle and Melina and the organizing that they've been doing in Phoenix and like how they even got into knowing what a e-hall pass was to begin with, because I think you all know, if you all have been having these discussions, that like sometimes the biggest hurdle is even just finding out that these things exist. Yeah, so real quick, I mentioned we co-lead the National Campaign for Police-Free Schools with the Alliance for Educational Justice, which has been around since 2017. We have a definition for what we mean by police-free schools. We've been fighting, trying to win the removal of the physical presence of police officers from schools. But increasingly, especially as we approach like 2020, and we actually saw like wins in districts actually removing police officers, we saw increasing, you all know this, and so I'm preaching to the choir here. Districts were like, yeah, sure, we'll remove the police officers, we'll remove the SROs, and then turn around and implement all these surveillance technologies that they viewed as like the compromise for them, right? Like, oh, we don't have police, but look, this is more efficient, this is cheaper. Look at all the good things we're doing for students, we're keeping them safe. And so we've been clear from the beginning that like when we say we're, fighting for police-free schools, that doesn't just mean a physical person, but that's policing and infrastructure, criminalization writ large. Anything that leads to the policing and criminalization of young people in schools is not police-free, right? We want the elimination of all of those things. And so part of that shift, especially, I think 2020 really was a catalyst that kind of like, it was a time when folks were looking for an alternative to policing, right? We're abolitionists, so we're not trying to find alternatives to policing. We don't want policing, period. But that's not the reality of where most school board members, most school districts are. And so we found that we had to kind of be clear on as the National Campaign for Police-Free Schools, like what do we mean when we're talking about surveillance, right? What are the things that we're trying to target? What are the things that we're trying to make sure people understand about school surveillance generally? Like why do we think that's something we should be fighting for? Why do we think that it's included when we say police-free schools? And I won't read it out loud, it's there, but we consider anything that controls, punishes, criminalizes, polices, profits off of students to fit under this like school surveillance umbrella. And I'll pass it to Michelle and Melina more, but I'll talk more about maybe some resources that because coming up with this, we co-created this definition in like many months of meetings with young people to like really want it to be expansive of what, really encompass the breadth of things we were seeing, right? Because there's so many different ways that things were happening and quickly, right? Part of the problem with fighting youth surveillance, fighting, school surveillance is that a lot of these are emerging technologies, right? Like people don't understand the people signing contracts for these things half the time don't understand what it is that they're signing contracts for. So like for us, it's a bigger hurdle, right? Like we need to find out stuff that they don't even know and that, usually private companies are not trying to share anyway. And then finding out, especially now, I feel like it's incumbent on us to make those connections for people, right? Like ICE has access to all of this information because they're using facial recognition. They are using all of these systems that, the companies that provide these things for schools are using that data, are using that information to train their systems to that, continue to use it against people, not just in the school setting, but obviously in community settings too. Um, but I'll pass it back to you, Michelle and Melina, to walk us through like what are y'all doing over there in Phoenix? Well, what's Puente up to?
Yeah. To a little bit how Melina said, Puente Youth is just part of Puente. We Puente has been around since 2007, but Puente Youth really actually started in 2017. During that year, was the year that we saw Trump running. We saw that they're trying to end DACA. And so there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of Youth at Puente that really wanted to like organize and come together to really talk about what the safety mean inside our schools, because we were already discussing what safety look like in our communities, but we never touched base inside schools and what it meant for students to physically not feel safe no more because there was ending DACA because of the past history here in Arizona with SB 1070, Show Me Your Papers law. All that history brought up a lot of awareness of like what did we actually want to fight for? And so that's when we partnered up and started our own campaign under the National Police Free Schools. We called it Cops at a Campus. And during that Cops at a Campus, we really got students together to talk about what starting to redefine what school safety is, and really challenging just ourselves and our community what that actually meant. But our base is just full of high school students here in Phoenix Metro area. And we're really here to just um, give students the tools. When I was a high school student in Puente Youth, I was pushed a lot to just, one, I got brought into this campaign because when I was in high school, I wrote a report on the school to prison deportation pipeline, and I had a teacher that told me I could not write that report because there was no true evidence on the topic. And when I told her, I was like, well, this is something I'm actually seeing every day in my school campus, us being harassed by the security guards, and starting to explain to her, like, this is the reason why, how our district is actually feeding to this. It was the same year that one of the organizers came up to me and asked me, like, hey, would you like to be part of this fight? We're trying to actually get end the contract with the largest police department, end their contract with the largest district in Arizona. And so that's how I was brought in and really invested inside this campaign. But the ultimate goal that Puente is trying to do is to create a cultural inside our schools where safety safety is not just defined on if we feel safe or not, but physically, how does it look like in our schools? Is it having more shade in our schools? Is it having more what kind of trusted adults and questioning all those? So every single time we meet, we redefine what school safety is too, because we're learning and unlearning on what schools should look like. Would you like to add?
I think with that, right, like we try to create an environment where youth can come to us and come with what they're seeing, right? Because like as was mentioned earlier, we don't know what's happening if youth don't talk to us, if you don't have a trusted place to go to. And so that's the environment we really do create, is to make sure that they know like you can speak out here, and what do you do now that you did speak out? Like what are the tools, trainings that we can provide you, so that now you can go back to your schools and start making that change and start creating the school where you feel welcomed in. So, but yeah, that's who we are.
So overall through the years, I kind of want to start off sharing on kind of like the wins and change we've been able to make. Um, and like Jessica mentioned, a lot of different campaigns and orgs during 2020, we were actually able to get end contracts with the police departments and get SROs physically out of our schools and districts. And here in Phoenix, Arizona, which what came out of it was $1.2 million back to schools to actually start redefining the money used for different school safety. With that, we also throughout the whole campaign, we demanded for better resources such as more counselors, more mental health programs inside our schools, things, and these were coming from students. We would gather with students and ask, do surveys and ask for their opinion. Us as a nonprofit organizations, we were not allowed inside school property, but the way we would go, it would be our own students doing the surveys and us gathering in parks and outside of schools, just having talks with students. But the most, I think the win that came out of it, it's okay, was school boards actually paying attention that students care, and really have voices on what safety look like for them. Unfortunately, because the school district couldn't think outside of the box, weren't really listening what students were saying. And a lot of the teachers, especially teacher unions here in Arizona, gathered because they were afraid of students. They were, and that was the problem, is why are teachers afraid of students? And so we really started talking about like what are those issues, and what are the supports teachers also need in order to feel safe with students. And those were the questions we were bringing up to the school board. And most of the times we didn't get answers, and they wanted these type of solutions in alternative of no police. And when we kept talking about what is policing to them, this is exactly what we were saying that we didn't want from students. But these were some of the things that were their answers, which was metal detectors, the detectors, IA camera, clear backpacks, and then with all this costs money. Yeah. And so that's when we started our new campaign, Students Over Surveillance, on trying to end at first it was the company that brought the weapon detectors to the school district gave them a grant, a credit. They gave them a credit to use these weapon detectors for free, for a certain time of period. And there was a mix of the community not wanting them and do wanting them. Unfortunately, the during a lot of the community safety meetings that the school held were in times where a lot of working families were working, students couldn't participate because they were during school hours. So there was a lot of things that the school district did on purpose for students to not be able to attend these safety meetings to talk about us not wanting them in schools. Um, and like you see in the pictures, we gather, you can go on to the next one. We gather every week. Um, we're youth led, so the students come up with the agenda. We're here to, me and Melina are here to just give them the tools in order how to organize in their schools, how to start a campaign, but they're the ones who talk about and bring up what's happening in their schools and communities. And there was one day that we were talking about because the weapon detectors were already happening. Um, we were just doing a regular check-in. How was your day? Um, and one of the students were frustrated. They're like, well, I was hurrying up to Puente because I really need to use the restroom. And then that brought up to another student. It was like, yes, the bathrooms are always locked. And then that's more questions started being answered, like, why is your bathroom always locked? No, it's because we have a EHOP pass and it's always saying it's locked. Um,
Yeah, so from there we were like, okay, what's this EHOP pass you're talking about? Like, we've never heard of that. And they're like, oh, is this thing they just started using because it was already the second semester of school. So they're like, is this thing they just started using a month ago where we have to, check in, like check to go to the restroom, and if there's restrooms are too full, then they don't let us go. And they're like, but sometimes the bathroom isn't even full, and it's just the system saying it's full. So we're like, okay, like, what do you mean? And so we just kept having those conversations with them. And from there we learned, like, some schools had already started it from August, and some schools were just implementing it barely. um and then we learned that different schools had different time frames. Some had like 9 minutes, some had 5 minutes. And so we were like, okay, we're like, why is this happening? What? And so I started asking them, really, like, why do you think they need these? Like, what's the purpose of it? And so they slowly came to the realizations, like, oh, it's another way of them surveilling us, right? Of just policing us without actually having an SRO there to follow us or something. So we were like, okay. And then we were like, well, how do they know when you get back to class and whatever? And they're like, well, it's because we either have to take our phone or our device that they give us at school. So our laptops with us to the bathroom. And security is actually able to track us when we're in the bathroom, when we're walking down the hallway, when we're walking towards, the library or whatever. Like, they're able to see all that. So if our timer goes off, like, and we're still in the bathroom, like, security will be outside the door knocking, asking, like, why are we taking too long? Like, what are we doing in there? And so that's where they're like, oh wow, like, they really are policing us still, just using, technology now. And so from that came also this, because we were just, at first we were like, okay, let's do a campaign on just, the metal detectors, the pilot program. And from there, the students were like, no, but like, there's different things that they're using now. And so this was just one district, and we had other students from different districts who were like, well, we don't have that, but we have vape detectors. Right? And they're like, and I'm tired that I just spray cologne or spray, my body mist, and it makes the vape detector go off. And we're like, okay. So we're like, so different districts are using different kind of surveillance. So I'm like, so what do we want to do? Do we want to do a campaign for each thing? And they're like, no. They're like, what if we do like a campaign covering all surveillance that's being done on students? And so that's how we came up with the students over surveillance, right? Like that we want all surveillance to end in our schools because we do notice that every school has a different type of surveillance. And so that's what these weekly meetings really help us give them that space to these students from not just one district, from multiple districts to be like, this is what we're seeing in our district and what can we do about it? And so that's like I know like we're focusing on primarily the eHealth pads, and that's how we even learned about the eHealth pads. And we started asking different states, different places. We're like, hey, have you heard about this? And they're like, oh yeah, we've been having that. We're like, oh okay. So like what we noticed a lot too, speaking to other organizers was that a lot of this was more on the east side of the US and it's just like kind of slowly trickling down. We did research on the app itself to see like what were the reviews on them and stuff. And that's when we were like, a lot of people were mad with this. Like teachers were even, the reviews on there were like, we don't like it. It's like it's so difficult. We're trying to teach, and we have to go on our computers to allow students to go to the restroom or allow them to go to the nurse. And so they're like, even teachers themselves have complained on there. Here in Phoenix, we have tried to speak to teachers about it, but we have heard from some that are like, we don't like it, but overall, like they don't want to speak out in like our in board meetings just because they're afraid of like that retaliation on them. So we have been really relying heavily on students to speak out on it, and we have a few times, and then there's been one board member who does kind of like wants to talk about it further, but nobody like else makes a motion to add it to the agenda, so it becomes a bigger conversation. So slowly these students have also been trying to develop relationships with them and like, making their presence to be like, hey, we want to talk about these different things. And so yeah.
Just to emphasize, this was something that was not like brought up from the school board, like a policy or a new
Mhm.
practice that's shared. It's something that individual schools started doing, and we eventually found out like this is actually a whole district. The whole district's actually implementing this, but was never passed through the school board. So the school board did not even know that this was something that schools do as a practice. And then the things that like was concerning when we like spoke to teachers, teachers were saying, well, we love this device because we get to track where all our students are at. And that's when I started questioning them, like, but do you know your student's name? Do you know, um, like how, like if a student was to be missing from your class, would you know who they are? And I think that brings the concern that like we're using surveillance and these tools not for the benefit of creating relationship and trust from students, but um we're actually not creating that trust. We're not creating that bond that from the beginning, from why is the district having to have clear backpacks? Why is there's the answer of like why do teachers want cops inside their schools? Because teachers are not trusting the students at all. And so those are questions that we keep questioning to admin and students. Do you have a trusted adult in your school? Are you guys able to communicate? And pretty much students, what they answer is like, well, in order to communicate with my teacher, I need to communicate them through this app. And in order for me to use the restroom, I need to fill this thing on the app, and for me to get denied that I can't use the restroom. Um, And so, yeah, I guess,
Go to the next slide.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
So, I know we're talking about the EHOP pass, but the reason why I brought this up, this was the surveys that the school district did around the weapon detector on how they felt. Did they felt safe or didn't feel safe? And one of the things that we noticed is that students actually felt less safe after having these weapon detectors inside the school district. If you see the first circle on the strongly disagree, it was 6%, and then the second time they went around and did it after having the metal detectors, it went to 8%. And then from strongly agree, like they agreed that they felt safe, it was at 8% and then went down to 6. So if you um see those surveys, they actually students felt less safe having the weapon detector metal detectors inside the schools. And one of the things that we didn't put on here, but teachers and parents filled out the same surveys, were the opposite. Um, and so we came to the school district like, hey, your goal is to listen to students, it's to hear them out, but you're not hearing them out because you're not seeing that they're not feeling safe there. Like you haven't questioned students on this survey that you did. Um, and so from doing like the asking them to end this e-hall pass, from ending the meta detectors, they kept just pushing for more of it because they still don't have they keep going around of the solution on answering like, well, if we do not have police, we need these systems in place in our schools in order to function. Okay. So one of the things that we found um very concerned about even the EHOP pass is that there was a lot of restrooms closed. They have certain amount of restrooms, but they would only open 2 restrooms at a time. And it started bringing up questions about health concerns and like students. We started talking about students' rights, general rights. Like students should have the right to use the restroom when they have to use the restroom. Um, this app is making them harder on teachers too because they're supposed to be teaching, and then during class they have to open this app in order for them to respond to the student if they're allowed to use the restroom or even go to another classroom to grab whatever they need. And so the the logo on the top where it says Security Pass, that's one of many companies um that offers e-hall pass inside the school districts. And in the picture in the bottom, that's how kind of it looks like. It shows red to the student, that their time's up. There's not a way for students to request more time. There's not a way for students, um, yeah. If you're in the restroom, like what if a student really needs to use the restroom and like their time's up, you have security inside the bathroom now yelling at your name for you to get out. So that has brought a lot of frustration from students of if rather just they'd rather not use the restroom to come to deal with the system. So these are real testimonies from students that have been saying Saint, do you want to read?
Yeah. So these are the different things that when we had our meeting, the students would tell us, right? Like it's too hard to request the bathrooms because there's the bathroom down the hall, there's 5 stalls, but there's really only 2 available, and that's to limit how many students can go to the restroom during class periods. They only have bathrooms open and they're actually, out in the other buildings. So like by the time I get there, I already, my time is already at half. They don't like being tracked. who likes to be tagged and someone seeing, a little dot of you just walk, around campus. So they're like, I don't like that. And then they're like, it's not enough time for the restroom because some of our bigger schools did tell us they only have like 5 minutes. And they're like, and the bathroom is like a minute down because I have to go down the stairs because it's, the one on the first floor and I'm on the second floor at the end of the hall. So they're like, it's not enough time for me. And then I have to get back to class. And so they're like, and they even brought it up. They're like, you know, like what if I'm having, like a bad stomach day? Like, would it like, like I can't rush that. So like, even though it sounds funny to say, right? But it's like a real thing. They're like I sometimes, like my stomach is not feeling so well, or, I ate something bad. And so they're like, this is just not enough time. And so those were like part of the testimonies that we heard from students. Um, while we talk about this and we're like, why do we want to tackle this? Why is this important for us to add it to our overall campaign?
And then just last week, one of the youth members were bringing up how when they use the restrooms, they have to turn off the school bathroom light because the door stalls are like too little that like you can see themselves. And so these are like things that we bring up, like would you rather want your school invest in better bathroom stalls than having the the vape detectors, having all this, even to have the weapon detector, the metal detectors, they had to invest so much money on building fence and just to make sure that there's only two exits, an entrance and an exit to the school. So when they're bringing new technology, that's training and time from staff that they're using. So everything is coming even at a bigger cost because it's not just the cost of the equipment, it's the cost of the training for the teachers. Um, we yeah, training overall, like it's not just training the teachers, but now you're having to the students learn a new structure that the school is trying to build when and overall we're trying to build a culture where students feel trusted, where teachers and students are able to speak to each other, um, and there's that community uh, that can count for each other. So that's what we're really trying to develop. Our campaign hasn't been the most successful just because um, we are trying to build that relationship with teachers, and unfortunately, here in Arizona, teachers haven't been really supportive of our student-led campaign because of teachers really wanting to have police inside our campus. So something that we strongly advise and continue to do is like we need to really do that community education on um, why is it harmful to have police and all these AI things that Jessica was bringing up? Like, who else has access to this data, to these cameras? Um, because schools, um, they also have to rapidly respond. One of the things that when they were passing the metal detectors, the reason why it was the decision was made so fast is because they used ESSER money, which was COVID relief money. They had to spend, and they used that excuse of like, well, we're gonna use this money to buy these metal detectors now, even though the pilot program's not over, but we need to use this money. So we're going to use it now. And then if the community decides to not have them, we'll just have them in the storage. And it's like, no, you're using that, you're already saying yes to this by buying them. Even if you have them in the storage or in campus, this was money that could have been used, especially here in Arizona, to create actual shade community student areas, so students can eat their lunch outside in school campuses. Like there was so much ways that the school district could have used that money. Instead, they decided to fund um in adding more fence to be able to use and spend their money on these metal detectors.
Not just fences. It's Arizona. We get to 115 degrees, and they actually also some of the schools have had to build shades for the metal detectors because they overheat in Arizona. So that's something that they didn't even like account with like for spending for the metal detectors was that the our climate here will, because some of our students actually did tell us that security got yelled at by a principal because they were overheating, and the principal is like, you need to put a shade over them because they're overheating and these are really expensive to replace, right? So that already just shows us like there was a waste of money there with that. And we have students who were like, they have us in lines waiting. They have shades for these metal detectors, but they don't have shade for us. So just that's to show that students are still not a priority, right? In the heat where it's 115 degrees here sometimes in the mornings, like the youth was still not a priority. It was these metal detectors who that cost them so much money that was much they rather protect than the students themselves.
Mhm. And all these issues connect because at the end of the day, students are not being trusted. Students, they're having, this is just another, what is it called? Another barrier in order for them to be successful in school. In order for them to learn, they have to go through these metal detectors. They have to use these e-hall passes to get anywhere around the school. And so it brings a lot of frustration inside a student where we're trying to build better culture in the school so students are happier to go to school, that students are happy um, to be able they already come from a stressful community of what's happening overall right now in this climate. And so now to come to a school that doesn't trust you, I, yeah, I would understand why students get frustrated as well.
Um, okay, so looking at the time, I know you want to leave time for some questions, so I'm just gonna run through these things real quick in like a minute or two and then open it up if folks want to ask Michelle and Melina any questions. But basically, I think one thing that I, hearing about the work that they're doing in Phoenix is that working on school surveillance, on youth surveillance is like playing whack-a-mole. Like obviously tonight was about eHall Pass, but as you hear from them, like they never had a distinct like, yes, let's do an eHall Pass campaign, right? It was as a result of them doing this other work on another type of surveillance that they realized, wait, we didn't even know this thing was going on. We didn't even know there was this whole other thing that we should fight against, because it's not like school districts are sending letters home to parents saying, hey, all your kids have been forced to download this Securely app and they have to ask permission to go pee and they only get 5 minutes, and they, like these are not things that are shared with folks. And so part of, one of the things we've been trying to do is just spread that awareness, right? I feel like we've gotten to a point where people are maybe more on board to maybe question the role of police officers in schools, but we're still meeting with the hurdle of like the surveillance hurdle. They're like, why isn't surveillance the good solution to not having policing? And so part of this is a zine, you can download the QR code, I can mail it out, is just to kind of like spark people's ideas of what people are going through every day, right? Like what are the different surveillance mechanisms that um young people encounter throughout the day, right? Like they're going through cameras, they're going through student device monitoring, they're the e-hall passes, they're doing the fancy metal detectors, right? The weapons detection systems, which is metal detectors with AI. And that we should, what part of the thing we want people to get out of like this zine, or like in addition to the knowing your rights, because there's a lot of questionable civil rights implications of a lot of these things. Um, but it's also like, how do we get people to understand that schools shouldn't, like, we shouldn't give a free pass for surveillance just because of their schools and just because folks can kind of take advantage of the fear, right? It's a lot of fear. It's kids. People are more willing to kind of accept surveillance because in the name of safety, especially for children. So how do we make sure that we're like really explaining to people like, no, this is what, like, if you're using the school's Chromebook, they're looking at all your stuff, like, do you want your teacher, your child's teacher to be able to know all the times that your child has gone to the bathroom that day? Like, there's just so many things that are I think once people find out about it, it's easier to understand like why this is wrong and why you should get on board with this fight. And part of this is like trying to explain and build those connections. And here this is, and I can share all this after. Michelle and Melina put together this best practices and safety checklist. It's not just for school surveillance, it's for surveillance in all kind of safety, and especially in this time when it's a lot of, you know, federal agencies going rogue and doing a lot of the harmful surveillance things. So we can send that out. Um, it's a cool flyer. And that's it. Thanks all. Okay. I have not looked at the chat at all. Let me see. Were there any questions in the chat?
I don't have any questions yet, but there's been a lot of information that has been shared, so we want to just pause and let people take it in. You are welcome to join us with questions in the chat, or you can also do a live question if you are ready. And one of the first questions that I have actually for the audience, and if you all can respond in the chat, is how many of you were familiar with eHall Pass before this evening? So everyone gets to participate, and some of you can ask questions.
I can kick us off with a quick question. When y'all were doing the eHall Pass campaign, I'm curious of like who all, like when you were investigating, who had access to basically seeing where kids, when and how kids are using the bathroom. Who all had access to that information? Who all had access to, I guess, like the back end of the Securely app?
We actually tried to find that info. We weren't able to find it. I know Jessica actually helped us with that too. We did send for PXU to send us like, where are these funds coming from? Like, because I'm sure they had to be paying for it. Like, what information is being collected when they sign up? Like, is it like they have to put phone number, email? Like, what is that? They never responded back to us. So we were like, and I think one of the board meetings that we went, we also asked them, we were like, hey, like, you're using this, but where's that info going? Where are you storing it? And so we just never heard back. The reason why we know how they're being tracked is because some of the students do have trusted teachers, and those teachers will be like, this is how it works. This is what we're seeing. So that was part of like, we were like, okay, so that's how security knows where you are. It was mainly the students. We did reach out to some of the teachers we know in the district. And they're like, well, and they kind of showed us what they see on their end as well. So that's how we've been really getting all this info is from mainly the students themselves, gossiping with teachers, and getting that out of them. And then just us trying to connect with people that we do know, but directly from them, like we don't have anything.
We've submitted public information requests that they have not responded to. So and haven't you all asked like the board members, right? Like they don't know anything. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I also see some hands raised, so we're going to jump into the live questions, but I also want to, again, for those of you that like me have memory, just drop it in the chat and you can still come on live and have it there. Okay, hold it. So we got a queue. I think it was Moira first and then Mao. if I'm pronouncing your name right. So I will start a queue in the chat if we have any more or more that come up. But Moira, what is your question?
Hey, well, initially it was if those were public information requests, but Jessica had said that. Because I mean that's and Jessica, you know this too, but like this is a issue in other states as well with uh, these departments or districts not responding or, not providing answers. So I don't know how we tackle that, but in the campaign currently, you talked about like it sounds like for this campaign around the e-hall passes, there might be more collaboration with teachers than there is on like the metal detectors and things like that, or even police in schools or whatever. So has this been a bridge to working together more? Are you like trying to build a coalition like with them? Or yeah, like if you could just say more around like how you're thinking about working that relationship now that you might have some teachers that are trusted on your side.
Yeah, I think when we found those teachers that were like, yeah, we don't like it either, we're like, okay, good, we can start working. Maybe they can help us work with the teacher union because the teacher union, we have three teacher unions here, and none of them like us. None of them ever want to talk to us. So we were like, okay, maybe that's our, gateway, like now that we're having relationships with teachers. But the issue is with these teachers, they don't want to come out and be supportive up front. So we really like like we try and but it just doesn't work out to be able to build that relationship with them. So that's why we just heavily rely on the students and um yeah. So unfortunately, we wish it would help us, but it doesn't.
We're gonna keep organizing for that, and hopefully we're
Hopefully,
able to do like a training for them too.
yeah.
So y'all have the plug for the teacher union.
Right.
Put a good word for us.
And I'll just add that like, again, they only found out about the e-hall pass from the young people in a meeting when they were already talking about other kinds of surveillance. So part of it is like, how do you find out that these things are being implemented when they don't even respond to public information requests and when school board members don't even know that these things are happening? So like if we are trying to find out like, do you know the landscape of surveillance in your school district right now? Like, do you feel confident that you know what the different types of surveillance are in your school district? Like, most people probably are not, because it's not information that is easy to get and easy to come across.
Thanks. I know you dropped it in the chat, but I also want to welcome you to come on, Mao, if you want to ask your question out loud.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? My name is Mal. I'm coming from Los Angeles with Students Deserve. Um, Michelle and Melina, really, really appreciate y'all sharing with us a little bit about the work. I think it's always really exciting to hear victories of students, especially in times, right, of like attacks on our community. So I feel really inspired. I'm very curious to hear more about some of the companies that y'all were able to come across that were either surveilling students or inviting folks to be surveilled. I know I saw Securely, and then I know Jessica dropped SmartPass, but would love to see if maybe there's other companies that we should be like keeping an eye out in other cities. I know here in LA we have something called the Lazar app, which is a similar app that was developed where students essentially are reporting like issues of vandalism, drug, and even immigration status, which has been something that we have definitely been looking into. But yeah, are there any other companies or folks that are developing these type of apps that we should be keeping an eye out for?
I think I don't know if you all have that no Notice Coalition. I feel like it'd be, we have like an informal list of different the heavy hitters for each type of technology, right? Because like there's usually a few. I think again the problem with all these startups, a lot of them are startups, so like it's hard to they are so new, so you know. And on the e-hall pass specifically, right now there's like a divide between places that are straight up banning cell phones in schools. And like, so, right, you can't have e-hall pass if you have a ban on cell phones. So I don't know how the e-hall pass companies are doing, like how they're, they're corporate, they're trying to make money. Like, obviously it's not good for them that states are passing like bans on cell phones. So yeah, I'm not sure. We can try to see and put together. I don't know if that's something you all have, but I feel like it's a good next step to think about if that would be helpful for folks.
One of the things I mentioned to Jessica this week is that I've been seeing more advertisements on social media to promote these e-hall passes, that they're cool to use. No, we'll no longer have to use paper, like making it very um useful and helpful to teachers.
Mhm.
Thank you. Clarence, did you have anything you wanted to say about other companies?
No,
Or
other than to say, I think it sounds like it would be helpful to develop like both a vendor list and like technologies also to be on the lookout for, and that's something that we can definitely talk about and notice, and like happy to collaborate with whomever in developing that, because I think just having a practical like here are the 10 things to be on the lookout for might be really helpful for folks.
and I know we only got a few more minutes. Ramaya, are you here? Do you want to read your question out loud, or do you want here you go. Okay, come on.
I am here. Please excuse Paw Patrol in the background. I'm in the living room with my 4-year-old. He run the house. We just live here. But my question was, do we know, as far as like location tracking, because it utilizes location tracking, does it track when they leave school grounds as well? And I asked that question because I know, like, for a lot of our apps on our phones nowadays, they do a lot of background tracking without us even knowing. I get the notifications that pop up like, do you want to change it to always allow? No, I do not. So do these also do that, or do you have to opt into the always allow for it to continuously track you?
That's also the question we asked. I know through through what we submitted to our district, that was like, okay, how is this tracking? Um, we want to assume that they do, just because some of them like they have it on their phones and some of them have it on their laptops. So we're already assuming that it probably is tracking them outside. But yeah, we don't have like a concrete answer from them or anything to say yes, but it's safe to assume that it probably is tracking them and that they don't have a way to like not let it be running in the background kind of thing. So, and I don't know if Jessica, if you wanted to add something with that, but
Yeah, I think for that too, it's like we don't have this, but like it would be great if someone could do, how like they like not break into phones. They do like forensic analyses on like how apps work. Like it would be great if someone did that on Securely or like another similar e-hall pass, because those are the kinds of questions we have no clue. We have no idea.
I also saw that Moira wrote, I think I heard of one where they use school IDs as hall pass attendants. Yes, they actually do have them. They're piloting them locally in Minnesota, where they swipe. And I'm not sure like what that looks like in other places, but they are. So in Minnesota, they have banned cell phones in the school. So I think that's why they're pivoting in that direction.
They're pivoting to digital IDs.
Well, the way that they use it is kind of like your cafeteria thing, and it connects to the system. And so you're able to track timelines. It's not exactly the same as eHall Pass, but it again is doing the same thing of tracking time, who's there, all of that.
Yeah,
But wouldn't that be the next step in the technology, right? Like, is to put a geo tracker in those passes so that you could just now wear them around your neck and then you're located without your phone. Like, I could just see the people on the right that have parents' rights and all that crap. Like, I could see them like being the unusual ally in this, like around student privacy, student safety. Like now a teacher and an adult man can track my child and know when they're maybe alone in a bathroom. Like, just spin it like that too. Sorry, I'm all ranty now.
No worries.
Yeah, I'll just say, yeah, they're like their thicker ID. They do have trackers. And then when you enter to a building, it's also tracking you building to building because some students do not have access to all the buildings. So those IDs are tracking you, even like gives permission or not permission to enter to certain buildings. So yeah, those do track you.
Well, I know we're almost at time, and I just want to extend our appreciation to all of you for the work that you put in over the years on identifying emerging technologies that are surveilling folks in schools. I think this gives us an opportunity to expand the conversation that you've been having on the ground locally, both with our our youth-led work and in other collectives and coalitions. So this is really great that you were able to share this with us tonight. And appreciate the time and energy. There are a couple questions that came out. I know that on our side, we're going to try to do a deeper dive and be able to provide them at least some context for your questions. We will be posting this video up on our notice page so that you can get the details. I heard Jessica also mention that for the folks that are in this particular session can get access to the PowerPoint, I think is what you said.
Yeah, I can send slides if y'all want to.
Yeah. We won't share them with the whole world, but we will share them with the folks that were here tonight. And again, we'll probably be sharing more information about this presentation in our notice newsletter. And I wanted to just ask as we get ready to close out, keeping this all in mind, what are you all doing? And you can drop this in the chat or you can share it out loud. What are you doing to protect yourselves and your families around digital security right now? And then we'll close out. And I will invite Clarence to wrap it up.
That's hilarious, Jessica.
The zine is available. It is already, like, you can download it. We have it on our webpage as well, so you can definitely have access to that.
And they can have the best practices checklist that y'all made, right, Michelle and Melina? Yeah. So we can download that and give that to you all.
Thank you.
Yeah. And looking at the chat, I feel the same as y'all. Like every day, I think I'm doing enough, and then I'm like, wait, they can do what now? What technology do they have? Huh? What do you mean? Yeah, I mean, literally, I was talking to Marika about this, speaking about e-hall passes. We were talking to some folks in New Jersey where they're piloting the use of the SmartLink app. It's like this technology that's used in the immigration enforcement context to like track folks who they're trying to deport. They're now bringing it to juvenile justice. So they're like juvenile justice agencies that are using the same app to track young people as like this kind of weird dystopian digital version of community supervision, probation stuff. Anywho, so suffice it to say, it's like every day there's something new. But I guess two things I'll just end this on are, number one, there are like very practical tools and strategies that we can all embrace that both on the individual level we can do to protect ourselves and our families, but also collectively that we can do. And there is a plethora of resources that are beginning to emerge across like this ecosystem. So we're happy to begin coalescing and sharing those out with folks as well. Just we're looking for like what are practical stuff that you can do today. But just to know that like we do have certain strategies. Again, nothing's foolproof, but there are ways of being able to mitigate those harms. And then the other thing I'll just say as we're getting ready to wrap up is this is, I think, a really powerful example we heard tonight of how young people are really not only on the front lines of these harms, but on the front lines of innovating and building the futures that we deserve. We talk about in the notice context of this idea of youth digital liberation, that if we're going to experience youth liberation, if we're going to see youth liberation in our lives, that it's going to have to reckon with these digital technologies and all these other forms of what we call algorithmic oppression. And so we're just like delighted to see these young folks, like leading the fight, showing us the way, showing us the importance of listening to young people, because that was their entry point to be able to understand how these technologies were shaping the lives of their friends and their community. And that really reflects what we've seen around the country. And we're excited to continue to share, especially at our next session in February, where you'll get to hear from folks in Chicago who've been doing the same thing, listening to young people, seeing how policing in schools is really evolving and changing in this era of big data and AI, and how young people are one step ahead, both in terms of being able to identify the harms, but also to help us build new solutions. So with that, I invite everybody, let's not let this be the last time that we connect. Please feel free to share all of these resources with folks, and we look forward to seeing y'all in February. Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thank you.